Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. Now, today I'm going to talk about my international team tournament experiences. We've just had it based in Birmingham, run by the UKTC crew. Went really, really well. There was 370 players there, with whatever that is divided by 5 for the number of teams there were. And I was there with Crow Team 6 again. So that is myself, Paul Bridge, who captains the team, currently playing Votan, Sam Dickinson, the one that I always forget, playing World Eaters. Obviously, you can also go and catch his series on both World Eaters and on Emperor's Children on Black Crow Gaming. Then we've got Darren Chapman on his Drakari, because he's always on his Drakari, and can always somehow just pull out a win percentage way higher than Drakari should be. I think he's the English Skari at this point, to be perfectly honest. And then we've got Dit Simu, who can't read. And we'll come on to that in a little bit. And Dit was playing Aeldari, but he was playing a slightly off-meta list. He wasn't playing Ynnari. We chatted about it, but Dit's gone, right, well, you know, I've been testing this list for a while. There's some real play around the Dark Reapers and the up-down ability of it. So he ended up playing, I think it's Aspect Host, which is definitely an interesting list. And we'll sort of cover how everyone got on a little bit later. And then obviously I was on Dark Angels. Who'd have thought? Who'd have saw that coming? And who'd have guessed this list I submitted? I changed exactly one thing since the South Coast. How exciting! So we've got Azrael, a combi lieutenant, some intercessors, some assault intercessors, 15 Deathwing Knights, because everything should start with 15 Deathwing Knights if it's Dark Angels, 3 Predator Destructors, 15 Jump Pack Intercessors, a squad of Outriders, which is the change from Incursors in that 80-point flex slot, and then 2x5 Scouts. Now, the only real thing to talk about the list, obviously, if you want to hear me wax lyrical about this list for ages, there's so many other videos where I go over it and why I think this is currently the best build of Stormlance for UKTC terrain. If you're on GW or WTC terrain, it probably isn't. In fact, it definitely isn't on WTC. But for UKTC terrain, this is the best build that I've been able to find. If there is a better one, I don't know it, to be perfectly honest, because otherwise I would play it. So the only change I made was the Incursors out and Outriders in. Now, the logic behind that was the Incursors were meant to be an early skirmish unit that assisted that ranged killing firepower and just had a little bit of mortal wound output. But what I was really struggling with was their survivability, because so much skirmishing, like killing profiles, that they're all around killing Marines and things like that, and that unit of 5 Incursors wasn't really gelling. Often they weren't getting within 3 inches to chuck their melter mine. They were shooting at something, maybe stabbing a unit, and it usually under 80 points and not really performing, and then just dying. And yeah, it was because they were being pushed into the center a lot, but they just didn't have that little bit of extra survivability that I wanted. Which is why I switched to the Outriders, because not only are they toughness 5, they're 4 wounds apiece, so there's actually more wounds than the Incursor squad, and they're also they go 12 anyway, so don't really need to worry about the sort of the Scout 6 versus the movement. Obviously, they can't breach, which is a bit of a shame, but they are 2 damage on the charge. And that's real nice, because they will just slaughter other sort of skirmishing units in combat. And because of that advance and charge and the size of those bases, they're actually really good at like jailing your opponent, or just being a bit of a pain in the backside anyway. And the fact that suddenly you have access to that 9-inch auto advance, or the -1 to hit, -1 to wound, just even though it's on an 80-point unit, there's some relevance there that your opponent has to factor in when they're thinking, how do I commit to this screen to deal with it? And I'll come on to it right at the end, but those Outriders really did outperform themselves. So I was very impressed with the Outrider unit for the Incursors. Felt very strong. Felt like it shifted across from a unit that was consistently sort of underperforming and then maybe sometimes doing well, to a unit that was just consistently performing and doing a solid job, and sometimes actually excelling as well. So that's the list. Obviously, you can go watch the other videos if you want a bit more of a deep dive into that, but let's go straight into the rounds. So round 1. Now, obviously, Death Guard is Dark Angel's apparent worst matchup. So of course my team said, well, we're going to throw you straight into Death Guard, which was really quite funny because we'd said after the last ITT, round 1, I'd had to go into Death Guard. So if you've watched that video, you'll have seen that I played against Death Guard round 1, narrowly won it 11-9. And we see our round 1 pairing into Bad Moon Cafe. I think they're called Bad Moon Brawlers, but they're from Bad Moon Cafe in London. So big shout out to that lovely team. They're a really, really great group of guys. And we said, oh, they've got a Death Guard player. Toby, you can handle that, right? And I'm like, well, we did literally have the discussion where I wouldn't have to deal with that, but I mean, fine. Yep, I can do it. And also, the nice thing is, because on paper, this is such a difficult matchup for Dark Angels to win, the Death Guard players tend to go, oh, I want that. And currently, I'm personally undefeated against Death Guard, so it's a case of going, right, how can I find that little edge over them? And I've got quite a lot of experience into Death Guard now. So sometimes it's a little bit of sort of, I've got to back myself. But Death Guard, once you sort of get over the scary points and you find a way to sort of exploit their weaknesses, be that by leveraging your predators more efficiently, be that with an alpha strike with the Deathwing Knights, or in fact just out skirmishing them and preventing them from scoring, that's really the best way to go with Death Guard. So my opponent Charlie, really lovely guy, playing Mortarion, Rotigus, Triple Predator, Terminators, Fights First Plague Marines, and the Rhino. I think there was some bloke drones in there as well. In the rest of the teams, and we only realised this after the game, they did also have Chaos Demons, so bless them, they actually had to change their lists halfway through the tournament. A little bit unfortunate, but it wouldn't have affected this round at all. But yeah, we had Demons, Votan, Blood Angels, and then I think Aeldari. Possibly Aeldari? No, it was Guard. It was Guard, not Aeldari. So we had Drakari into Demons, Votan into Blood Angels, Guard into... I think I've said that. I'm pretty sure I have said that. And Drakari... No, I said Drakari into Demons, and then World Eaters into Votan. Ultimately, I don't remember much because I was so focused on trying to beat Death Guard. So turn 1, Rotigus pushes out, and I go, perfect. Okay, Mr. Rotigus, you are now exposed in front of 3 Predators, and I'm pretty sure I can slingshot some Deathwing Knights into you. So Rotigus dies on turn 1 to Predator Fire, and then the rest of that flank promptly falls to some charges from Deathwing Knights, just deleting the Nurglings and Bloat Drone that were holding that objective, and really giving me those options of pushing further forward and going, well, you can pop out with that Predator, but it will be dead as soon as it moves out. Mortarion was sort of chilling around the middle, and then there was some Plague Marines on the expansion objective. My expansion objective, the right-hand side objective for me, but I just kept on, because there's only a tiny little lip that you can get models on behind there. I was just out seeing it with the Assault Intercessors. Just doing those trades, being efficient, making sure that I was denying those points but dominating other areas of the battlefield, because that's the real trick with Death Guard. You need to use that speed to really sort of get around them. Obviously, that is less relevant now because Death Guard have just massively changed and massively had a big glow up, but that was how you could deal with them previously. So in the end, I sort of managed to get a decent push. Deathwing Knights continued to push, didn't touch Mortarion, didn't touch the fights for... did I touch... I think I did towards the very end, where I was trying to push for more points and sort of really, really go for the throat. But, it's because you can see there on Cleanse, I was only holding 1 No Man's Land objective during the turn. I think I took it in the end. But yeah, that was a bit of a pain. But luckily, obviously, got the win, 13-7, and that was 84-64. And then overall, it was a winning side of the draw. So I think we drew by 2 points. I think we got 53. So very, very close to getting that win. Bit of a shame, bit gutted to start off like that. But we all kind of agreed if we're going to get a draw, now's a really nice time to get it, because it's going to put us into a bracket where maybe we'll get some kind of matchups, and we've not taken a loss yet. So there's still a good journey that we can go down. So that's sort of where our heads are at going into round 2. So going into round 2, I think we got a team called Adeptus Stupidicus. Excellent name. And I ended up going into Astra Militarum. And this was Hammer of the Emperor Astra Militarum with triple Rogal Dawn. So it was triple Dawn, some Taurox, some Scions, some infantry, couple of Lehman Russ with the autocannons to give extra AP. I think that's everything. I can't remember off the top of my head, but obviously we were on Purge the Foe against triple Rogal Dawn. So that's 2 Rogal Dawn tank commanders and 1 standard Rogal Dawn. So a little bit of a stat check, a little bit of a stressful one. And I think the rest of my team didn't want Guard. Because they saw the stat check, they saw that it was Purge the Foe, and as a team, because we had World Eaters, Aeldari and Drakari, we were actually quite weak on mission 2. So it was one that we really needed to get out of the way early and just sort of push our opponents quite efficiently. So I end up into Guard. I think I predicted like maybe a 10, possibly an 11. And then it kind of popped off. So what I was able to do is because the Rogals were kind of forced to sit in the middle of the board, I was able to tag them so often with a single unit. And yes, they have a stratagem to fall back and shoot, but equally they're only then shooting a chaff unit like a jump pack intercessor, and I can tie them up for as long as I like, which then allows me to find that space to eventually go, right, well, here comes the Deathwing Knights, and they're going to crunch in. And actually, I ended up taking Will's home objective at one point. My rolls and advances were pretty cracked, which really helped just sort of get me into a strong position where I could just sort of jail him with lots of different units, and then just apply that pressure with Predators and Deathwing Knights. And that sort of push where suddenly he had 10 to 15 Deathwing Knights on his home objective, and sort of that's not a position that many people can recover from, and that's exactly what happened. So I think that was an interesting matchup, and I think it was partly because of the way the board was set up that I was able to sort of get that amount of advantage, because the way that the tanks often deploy and have to deploy safely on that is, it's an interesting one, because they're usually in the same place, and if you can just sort of get a unit into them that can tag both of them, slow them down, delay them, especially if it's not in hammer and they don't have fullback shoot, like there's a lot of nasty stuff you can do. So it didn't really matter that he could go through walls, because he couldn't go through models, and that was what was blocking him. So really interesting little game that. You can see that I dropped 3 points, and that was on secondaries, and that was because I forgot what secondaries I had. I should have actually kept behind enemy lines, looking back now, because I was in his deployment zone with multiple units on that turn, but I just forgot, and then I CP'd it away, draw mark for death. What's a man to do? But so I managed to get this one 97 to 63, and I think it really came down to that movement phase. Will was a really nice guy. We had a really good laugh. Had a couple of beers together. We started pretending that we're making up rules, or certain good stuff. It was just one of those really like chilled out, fun games. It was really good. It was really, really enjoyable. And I think most of the team said, yeah, we heard you two howling from the other side of the board. I think in terms of matchups, I honestly don't remember what the rest of the matchups were, because I was down the end just sort of focusing on thinking that actually we might be in a bit of trouble here. Luckily we weren't, with a couple of high scores delivered from other players within the team. One draw, I think that was maybe Drakari GSC. It was Drakari something. Drakari Aeldari was the draw. I knew it was a T3 annoying army, so it's either going to be Drakari, Aeldari, or GSC as that annoying army. But yeah, so it was a solid round. Good to get that win and sort of like get back to that okay, cool. You know, that first round didn't go as we planned or hoped. However, here's what those next steps look like. So yeah, that was a really solid game. We pushed on through, and then in round 3, because they'd also got a draw in round 1, we got Vanguard Tactics, their first team. So that was always going to be a very difficult game. I got to go into Jord, who is really lovely. As a team, VT had Custodes, which obviously Steve was on. He's a very good Custodes player. Ben was on 120 Orc Boys. Ben Jones, again, very, very talented player. Also just a lovely dude. And then I think it was a chap called Jay on Imperial Knights. And then Jake was playing Votan. So it was an interesting one because we had World Eaters into Imperial Knights, which we thought would be quite a good game. Our World Eater player predicted quite a high score into that. We were like, perfect. Okay, that's really good. Then we had Votan into Votan, which is good because Paul is an extremely talented Votan player. He really knows that faction in and out. I think he's currently top in the UK for it. Then we had Drakari into Custodes, which is an interesting one because there's a couple of big nasty fights first bricks in that Drakari list, but obviously there is that 2 up 4 up. Sometimes that mass, because they've got that mass infantry shooting from Drakari, but it doesn't really have any AP. And then they've got the kind of the big melter shots or dark lances or haywire, but that's not really doing the business into 4-up invents. So that was always going to be a really interesting match, and it was an interesting match. Then obviously I was against Blood Angels, which is Angelic Inheritors, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail in a second. And then the 120 Orc Boys were into Aeldari. And the reason that happened was because the lovely Ditz, he typed in Vanguard into the search function on BCP, and then he clicked the first Orc list that he saw. Now, unfortunately, there was another team that was also playing Orcs, Custodes, Blood Angels, Votan, and Imperial Knights, and they weren't VT, but they were called Vanguardians of the Galaxy. So you can see where I'm going with this one. At this point, Ditz read the wrong list and went, yeah, I should be fine to that. Beast Snagger Boys, some trucks, that's fine. I can kill all of that. No, it turned out it was 120 boys, and made all the funnier that the Orc players list that he did read was actually a fellow Black Crow Martin. So Ditz Can't Read is now our sort of unofficial team anthem, and that was possibly one of the funniest ways to lose a round ever. We did lose this round, unfortunately, but it was hilarious to hear the reason that we lost this round. And it was a really, really good match, really good game. I had a great time into Jordan. I played him once before when I was playing CSM, and he was playing his Blood Angels. I think he was still, I don't know if it was lag or, because it was before Angelic Inheritors came out, so I think it might have been lag. But that was a game where the Sanguinor got one shot by a Rubric Marine Sergeant, which was crazy, and then I proceeded to get smashed off the board by everything else. And it was just like, poo, I should have played Dark Angels, and then this wouldn't have happened. And then I proceeded to play Louis on Dark Angels, who proved to me that I definitely should have been playing Dark Angels, which was very, very funny. But when as soon as I saw the options, I went down as first defender, and I saw I had the options of Imperial Knights or Blood Angels, and I was like, I want to play Blood Angels, not only because I think it's a good matchup, but because Jord is just a really lovely guy. The kind of player that you know that you're going to have a fun game, you're going to have a fair game, just like really good stuff. Wouldn't really say anything negative at all. Jord's just a fantastic dude. And you should definitely go and check out the stream that VT have just done, which was Orcs versus this Blood Angels list. Really, really interesting list. And I think the big cool innovation for me, at least, Jordan might have a slightly different opinion in terms of like what the innovation was, because I'm not a Blood Angel specialist. I don't know what the best looks like. But obviously we've seen a lot of lag, which is Liberator Assault Group, the index version that Josh Roberts has been playing. But this Angelic Inheritors one, when they're led, and then that means that they're re-rolling lots of stuff. They've got some really nice little strats, so like an 18-inch loan up, and that was really cool with some Desolators. So Desolators with an Apothecary, and then you stick them on the top of the building, so they're getting plunging fire the whole time. They're ignoring cover because they don't need to move, and then they are happy as Larry. And I was so impressed with that unit, because it can just pick up skirmish units, because that Venga launcher is just so good into Marines. And imagining that unit into like a one wound army would be so brutal, because it just go through them like a knife through butter. So that was really interesting and cool. And then there was a big blob of Sangard with a captain with turn-off Overwatch enhancement. That was just because Jord had 10 points left over. Wasn't something that came up. Dante with 3 Sangard, 1 Ballistas Dreadnought, 15 JPIs, because JPIs are the best. What else was in there? Big Death Company blob with Lamatis, which is obviously, that's really fallen out of fashion. But the Death Company with Jump Pack blob with Lamatis, I really like. I think it's solid. I know it's quite expensive, but like it's got some seriously good damage output. And it would have some seriously better damage output if it wasn't going into Dark Angels, because obviously that -1 damage has been a major issue for Blood Angels for a long old time. But equally, -1 damage back into Dark Angels is quite a serious pain in the backside. It can cause some real issues. And then the Sanguinor was in there as well, so we got to enjoy some uppy downy fights first, which was really cool. I don't think he actually got to do a huge amount in this game, but that was because we were on the light board, and I think Jord had kind of been instructed by his team of just get any number of points, because I think he'd clocked it wasn't the best of matchups for him, but because he'd taken that not so good matchup, there were some other good matchups elsewhere. Ultimately, with Aeldari getting 20-0'd and Drakari losing 18-2. So it was one of those where possibly he might have fallen on the sword a little bit. I don't really know. But, I think I saw him post on his Instagram afterwards saying, my job was just to get points. And like, fair enough when you're in a team's environment. It was really solid. And obviously that was compounded by the fact that I went second on 6 objective take and hold. That is very, very rough. Your opponent is almost certainly going to score 15 primary at the end of the game unless you table them. And trying to table 15 Deathwing Knights is very, very difficult, especially for Blood Angels. Now, we talked a little bit about it at the end, and I think the only mistake that Jord made, I'd actually made a massive boneheaded error where I thought that the ballistas wouldn't easily get line of sight to my bikes. Which, if I'd actually just got down and looked properly, I would have clocked that, yes, it definitely did with the position that I deployed them. So that was a bit of a cock-up, but it actually really turned into an advantage, because 2 of the Outriders did die. Fine, I don't really care about those Outriders getting a little bit of pain, because then the ballistas was out in the open. Because that ballistas was out in the open, I was able to then push across with 2 Predators, get the 2 Predators into it, and wipe it off the face of the earth. And because then we're on the light board, I had complete range advantage. Dante was then forced out to try and pick up a Predator, but he had to charge something else to then try and get the Pred, and he just got Dante into it, and then I think Dante he got like the equivalent of 10 damage through, and then I saved most of them, which was obviously a bit of a spike. I think I saved 3 of 5, so I only took the 4 wounds. Go down to 7, so happy days. Like, then suddenly I've got 2 Preds, Dante's there ready just to be slaughtered, and it goes back to that slightly more cagey. I think I should have been more aggressive here. I think that I was too reserved, because it was my job to be the blunter, And I think I took that a little bit too far in this game, where actually what I should have been doing was going, okay, this is a good matchup for me. I should really push and really go for those early charges, put myself, take those risks with the Deathwing Knights because they are favourable in this matchup. So there was a lot. I think that was my major error, which then kind of allowed the game to be a little bit closer. When the big blobs came out, they split. One went after 5 Deathwing Knights on the left-hand flank. One went after 10 Deathwing Knights on the centre of the board. And the Deathwing did their thing. They soaked up a lot of damage, and then they clattered back and did significant. They picked up both blocks. So it was quite a bloody game. We tore real chunks out of each other. But as you can see, that kind of, because also the cards were kind of nice to me, or I was getting to redraw into decent cards as well. That allowed me to just sort of pressure a little bit more. I think it was quite funny that we both had basically the same objectives turn one, of secure no man's containment and extend battle lines in containment. So it was a really solid game, really good fun. Definitely favoured by me by being on the light board. Meant that I could be quite dominant with the gun lines with the Predators, which is why they're so good on UKTC. But we did end up losing that round because Imperial Knights won 12-8. Our Votan did win 15-5. Obviously, I won 14-6. And then I've mentioned the Orcs and the Custodes sort of getting some reasonably high wins. And it's difficult to come back from 2 reasonably large losses in teams. At that point, you're kind of chasing a draw, and it was once they got the 3rd win, it probably just wasn't going our way. So we ended day 1 at 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss, which was fine. We sort of going, okay, this is where we're at right now. How do we turn this into a 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss? What are those next steps? So we got our pairing pretty quickly. We got Carnage C Unit. I wonder what they're trying to do with that name. And there was some very interesting stat checklists in this one. So we'll come on to that now. You can kind of see the score does give it away a little bit. But Carnage, great group of guys. One of their players, Gordon, I played previously at Sheffield. Really nice guy. Usually plays guard, was on Imperial Knights this time. But really good fun. Lots of just a really nice team. I was up against Matt, who's a really lovely guy. Although his nickname was Nug, and I was like, why is your nickname Nug? And he was like, well, apparently I had a breakdown over nuggets in high school, and now I'm in my 40s and they still call me Nug, which I thought was exceptional. Like that's top tier names at that point. And rather hilariously as well, while we were playing this game, we'd been chatting quite a lot, and I'm like, this is the kind of the standard-ish Dark Angels list. You've seen it probably before. There's nothing really that special about it. It's just 15 Deathwing Knights, 3 Preds, 15 JPIs, that kind of good stuff. He was like, oh yeah, my friend plays exactly this, but switches the Preds for Ballistas. And I was like, oh cool, mentioning to him, I do this huge show called The Lion's Den. And about 5 minutes later, Matt gets a call from his friend Darren going, can I talk to him? Can I talk to Toby? I think that was probably one of the stranger but funnier moments I've ever had in 40k, where I'm there with my phone in one, Matt's phone in one hand, finger in the ear on the other, because it's so loud in those halls, trying to have a conversation with the bloke, but also being like, okay, but I need to plan out where I'm going to go. But yeah, big shout out Darren. That did put a big old smile on my face. I thought that was really, really funny. So yeah, on to the game against Carnage. So it was lots of stat checks. They had both versions of Knights. So they had Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights. War Dog spam for Chaos Knights, the standard. And then Canis Rex plus Baby Knights for Imperial Knights. Then we had World Eaters, kind of like a standard-ish World Eaters list, but they went for Khan rather than the Master of Executions, which is obviously like a higher damage output versus that fights first. So interesting one. I'm not sure which one I would go for personally, but that's why I'm not a World Eaters player. I'd probably go for Khan because I'd find it funnier. And then there was a Nurgle Demons list, which was all about battle shocks. And it was just 3 old big boys. So 2 Great Unclean Ones and Rotigus, loads of beasts, loads of plague bearers, all that good stuff. It was just going to force those battle shocks, do those mortal wounds, and just sort of bully on points. It was a proper blunting list. And then we had Matt's list, which was Spirit Conclave Aeldari. So this was 15 of the Flamer Wraith Guard, 10 Wraith Blades, 2 Striking Scorpions, a couple of the Jet Bike Warlocks, a couple of the other Spirit Seers, Eldrad, some Storm Guardians, and 3 Wraith Lords. And that was it. So I was like, okay, this army has Ignore Mods as a strat, has inbuilt Fight on Death, it has Torrent weapons that force me onto my invulnerable save, and it's got fallback shoot. And it can -1 damage itself to make itself more survivable in any phase. In theory, that sounds quite rough. But when I was looking at this, I was like, there's not actually that many models. There's only 25 of these wraiths. And that's that's not a huge amount in terms of stat check when I'm firing 3 Predators at them a turn. And I've got the Deathwing Knights pushing in as well. So what I ended up doing was I went second, which definitely helped. And Matt kind of pushed out to try and get on some objectives, get some skirmish units in place. And because obviously I've got this plethora of skirmish units, I was able to just pick them up, get rid of them, off the table, done. Don't need to worry about those Striking Scorpions. Don't need to worry about the Warlock on bike, because they were out to try and score primary, but I can just jump over them with JPIs. All that good stuff. Although rather hilariously, a squad of Striking Scorpions did manage to tank 2 Predators with Oath of Moment pounding on them, and then had to be finished off with some Deathwing Knights, which was really quite funny. But yeah, so I managed to get that going. And at that point, Matt decided to sort of commit. Well, he had to commit his Wraith units because there weren't any other skirmish units left. So he brought Flamers and a last Striking Scorpions into the middle, brought a Wraith Blades and a Flamers over to my expansion objective, brought the Wraith Lords out, and one of the Wraith Lords out into the open, and the other 2 kind of started pushing back so that they could go towards his expansion objective, brought some Wraith Blades out towards that expansion objective, and then had another squad of Flamers in reserve. And I was like, have you got anything left in that middle behind that building? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, I think I just run at you. Like, because there was this lack of critical mass of models, and suddenly they were out, and they had to be out, because otherwise I'm just scoring primary and just going, cool, like, that's fine, you chill back there and shoot me, I'm just going to score my primary. These Wraiths suddenly were having to receive charges from Deathwing Knights, which is then exactly what happened. And those Deathwing Knights were then able to push from the centre and Matt's expansion objective, take over the expansion objective, weather the storm back, and then just sort of fall back and hide. And then the other 10 in the middle were able to push on and take his home objective, which was pretty damn impactful, which then stopped him scoring any primary for the rest of the game. So I think you can see there he scored 6 on primary, which is rough. Like, Linchpin is a bad one for scoring primary. It's tough to keep up with primary on that one. Like you can see, even with that sort of quite heavy board domination that I had, I didn't max my primary. And that's because Linchpin is quite tough. And then obviously he kind of kept up with the secondaries up until the point where I'd basically tabled him. And then that allowed me to kind of snowball effect, keep pushing, and get those key points that I needed to. And I think I did end up tabling him in the end. But it was a really good game. Matt was really, really nice guy. We had a great laugh. I think it was just that fact that he didn't have a critical mass of units. And I think it's because those wraiths are just probably a little bit too expensive. I don't know what the sweet spot is for them, but they're too pricey at the moment. And I think, to be honest, instead of maybe like striking scorpions, I would have had more rangers and things like really like the cheapest Aeldari units you can get. Just cheap MSU, maybe some Howling Banshees for some fights first, like those kinds of things, just to give you that little bit extra. But yeah, it was an interesting game, that, because like the ignore mods came up once, but that was it. And that was because those Death Ring Knights didn't really have much contesting them when they went for that big push, and then the one that was going to get contested just kind of hid behind a wall and then popped out and did nasty things. So yeah, that was a really, really, really solid game. So we're going into the next round. We managed to win that round. I think we had 3 quite large wins, 1 sort of medium loss, and then I think a draw, maybe, or maybe like a light win, a small win. But yeah, this was a 20-0. So we're going into the last round, and we're hoping for a decent matchup. At the 2 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss bracket, it's very interesting what teams you go into. There is a real diversity of the amount of teams that you could jump into, because someone might have got a Team England squad on round 3 of the day before, and then gone into one of the other guys that had gone into Team England, or Mind Goblins, or one of those guys the day after, and got that draw. So it's potentially a very, very sharky area. And that's exactly what happened to us. We ended up getting TFG Gaming, which I just couldn't remember their name for the life of me the whole time we were trying to look for those lists. I can't remember. Is it BFD? Is it? Honestly, it was terrible. But the TFG guys, I think they are usually captained by someone that was playing for one of the Team England squads. So they had the lovely Ed Watts, who the mad inventor, absolute bloody genius. That is Ed. Also, really lovely guy. Gives the best hugs as well. Really, really brilliant hugs. And I was so excited when I saw Ed, because I was like, I mean, this is going to be a tough one, but like, it's going to be a good laugh. And that was the great thing, because sometimes it can be a little bit stressful going into that game 5, and you're like, well, what's my opponent going to be like? That this is the last one. Are they going to be a little bit uppity, or that kind of thing? And luckily enough, I've avoided that kind of thing. But you do hear stories. It does happen. Some people just don't bounce off each other well. But the TFG guys were absolutely delightful, and it was great seeing that. Ed's obviously a wonderful guy, playing some sort of bonkers Seer Conclave Aeldari list. Go and check out 6++'s video on it. It's absolutely brilliant. The 6++ guys are fantastic anyway. If you're not subscribed to them, why not? Go support 6++. They're brilliant. Such a talented team, and they produce really, really great content as well. That's enough licking of their backsides. I'll do that in person for them. So going on to my game, I came up against Matt, who was on Drakari playing Reaper's Wager, and I think he was taking his list from Nottingham, but I had a little look up afterwards. I think he went 4-1 at Nottingham with this list. So really, really interesting list. And I don't know what the team logic was when they put Drakari into Dark Angels. I don't know if they were maybe looking at it as a blunter, a bit of a pusher, because I went down as first defender, and I got the option of Ed or Drakari, and I was like, well, I want Drakari because I play against Darren all the bloody time, because for some horrible reason we always seem to pair into each other. So I ended up going, cool, I really want that Drakari. I think it's a solid matchup for me. It's got Dark Lances rather than the Melters, which are a lot better for me to go into. So there was a lot of things that I was like, cool, that's really positive. So we had Aeldari into Aeldari, which was a rough one for Ditz, our Aeldari player, because that Seer's Council, it spits out a lot of mortal wounds. Very, very cool and interesting list. Then we had Nids into our Drakari. We had Custodes into World Eaters, where Sam pulled out a bit of a blinder of a win on that one. And then we had Votan into something. I can't remember. I can't remember what Votan was into, but it was something really good, and a very, very good player as well. So, sometimes when I go down as first defender, I just forget what's going on around me, and I'm like, fuck it, right, let's go. Matt, really nice guy. One of those games where you just play and you're like, cool, this dude's super chill. We're just going to have a really good game. It's going to be proper relax. And like there was a couple of moments where we were like, we could just call this 10-10 and just chill out. I was really tempted to, but I was like, I'm having a really good time doing this game though. So it was really good fun. Matt, if you come up against Matt, you'll have a brilliant time. Now I think the tough thing here was Matt went first in 5 games. So I think he had a bit of a torrid weekend in regards to going first, because obviously going first is quite a negative. And again, he went first in this game on Scorched Earth. That is an even bigger advantage. You can see that towards the end of my primary points as to why that is such a big advantage. So that was kind of terrifying. Was not excited about sort of then kind of being in the driver's seat a little bit, because I was like, well, I know I have to be cautious into Drukhari. And we kind of just looked at each other for a couple of turns and we're just like, well, we're just going to score secondaries. I'm going to have this, you're going to have that, that's fine. Turn 2, I decide, right, okay, I need to threaten a big turn. So what does threatening a big turn look like? So I push up 2 predators. Well, actually, I pushed up 1 predator and I'm like, okay, I think I can get this reasonably safe. And then I go, what if I push up another predator and I put that 280 points of tank kind of, in quite a susceptible position? Will that draw out those Talos? Because if I can get those Talos, there's nothing that can really compete with those Deathwing Knights. Dark Lancers really struggle. The Witches were kind of on the expansion, so I was able to just keep my distance away from them. So I was like, well, if I just sort of make it look like I've made an error, put these 2 predators into the kind of open, they're meant to really take my time and try and hide them, all that kind of stuff, which I was never going to be able to do properly. And I was looking at it like, that is not good positioning if I'm hoping to keep these alive. And then Matt rapid ingresses 2 of his Talos. I'm like, ooh, I think he's going to go for this. I think he's going to commit. And I thought that he was going to commit completely and try and have the fight in my deployment zone. But what he ended up doing was he pushed with 2 units of Talos and then a Dark Lance squad. He rolled absolutely horribly on the Dark Lance damage. Like, it was genuine, it was terrible. I think he got 2 through and he did 6 damage, so he CP reroll 1 of them. But rather hilariously, my Predator didn't die at first. Then he shot the other Predator, destroyed that Predator, it exploded, killed the other Predator, and killed some of my guys as well, just to give the exact amount of OC that those Talos could then come onto the objective, kill my JPI unit, and equal OC against my scout unit, which was very, very frustrating, very, very funny, but very frustrating in the moment. I was like, shit, I've got to concentrate now. But what that did was it allowed me to really get a springboard for Azrael's squad to push up and push onto my expansion objective, secure that, killing those Talos, get the Deathwing Knights into the Talos and into the Grots on his front line as well, sort of get those initial charges, which were really very key. And at that point, I was never going to pick up the Grots, but I was able to pick up 4 Talos, I think some other random units, and I was able to sort of start having the domination of that centre, but not overcommit over that ruin in the centre. And then Matt didn't push me in the next turn. He just tried to skirmish again with some Scourges, and he was going to bring out his Witches and go after my bikes. And I was like, are you sure you want to do that? Because you're winning them on 5s. Like, yeah, if you go Super Saiyan, you're going straight through with Lilith. But, she's winning on 5s. She will struggle to pick up 12 wounds of unit, and then you're standing in front of 20 shots of intercessor that can probably just pick up that unit. It was rough. It was really, really rough. So luckily, Matt didn't do that, because I think this would have been a lot nastier of a score had he decided to go for that move. So I mean, it's, I guess, not good for me, but like, oh well. I'm not going to let an opponent like make a decision like that. Like the Talos trade, sure, fair enough. I lose 2 Preds, but like losing a bike or 2 for Lilith and her fights first unit, like, nah, that's not cool. So I warned him off doing that, which luckily he listened to, and that kind of, because the witches were off on that expansion side, they weren't able to really get involved in that fight in the centre. And what I did was I then used the bikes to kind of just screen off the central objective. And when I screened off that central objective, I just went, right, okay, I'm going to burn it with these scouts. So we screen off that objective, and Lilith then has to go out and go into these bikes. And she has to pick them up to be able to consolidate onto the objective to stop my burn. And she picks up 2. Her entire squad picks up 2. With a pain token, or Lilith going crazy, all that kind of stuff. They did 10 wounds to that bike unit. If that had been in cursors, I wouldn't have been able to do the kind of the blocking that I'd done, because the size of bases was really important. They would have been slaughtered in seconds. And that's 5 points difference. That was huge. That was really impactful, because it forced Matt to do something, which then allowed me to sort of push that final advantage and get to his home objective. And at that point, it was not looking healthy. And that was kind of the turning point. I think that was the moment where we went, okay, this is going away from a 10-10, sort of 11-9, towards a slightly more brutal score. And it was very much like, how much can Matt get? He got very unlucky on his secondary cards. In the end, I'm pretty sure he did redraw one of those. And then fired at a Predator with some Dark Lance Scourges when it was on 6 wounds. I smoked, so hitting on 5s. He gave them sustained hits, got 4 through, 3 wounded. And I was like, oh God, this is rough. Like, 2 5s and a 6. What can I do? Roll my saves. I've got cover because of smoke. 3 5s. And I'm like, oh, okay. And there was that little bit of luck as well that really handed me that final little bit, which then allowed me to sort of win it, the 100 to 80 and 13-7. But unfortunately, because of that really rough Aeldari loss to that really cool Seer Council list, we ended up losing that round by 1 point, which is tough. It's always tough when you lose by 1 point, but equally, it's also not tough because, we lost to a really lovely group of guys. We had a great time doing it. It's one of those, like, yeah, obviously I get a bit of privilege because I walked away still with a win, managing to get 5 wins across the weekend. But like, it was still such a pleasure of a game. Really good fun. Really lovely group of guys. If you ever go up against the TFG guys, they're absolute class. Very good players. Very nice people. Can't say enough nice stuff about them, really. If you go up against Ed, he's a little handsome devil. I was trying to think if I should insult him or say something nice. Decided to say something nice. And also, you should go to his tournaments, which are based at Firestorm Cafe in Cardiff. They're an absolute laugh. Ed's a brilliant guy, brilliant TO. And the community there is exceptional. The sort of Welsh grassroots community for Warhammer, absolute class. I had so much fun there. I ended up vomiting in the car park because I was really hungover, which was even funnier. But it's a really good one. So check that out. So big plug for Ed. Big plug for 6++ with their GT coming up again in St Albans. Can't remember when that is, but check it out. It's really, really cool. And yeah, that was the ITT. I managed to get 5 wins. We went 2 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, which is a little bit of a disappointment for the team. I think we were hoping to do a little bit better after the 4-1 at the last ITC. But for me, I've felt like I've been in a bit of a funk recently with my playing. I've not really been enjoying it as much. And I think part of that's because I'm getting used to a new job, all that kind of stuff. But this weekend I was able to kind of go, okay, cool, we lock in, we do the stuff, we're back on UKTC terrain. I know what I'm doing. I know that I can win these games. And getting that 5-0 was just really affirming. And sometimes that's really important. Like you've got to be careful of your mental health when you are playing Warhammer, because like it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be a hobby. And when you do content creation and coaching and all that kind of thing, it can become a little bit more than that. And like you start worrying at times. And I think that's why I was like, you know what? No, I just need to go there, have fun. And have a good time. And honestly, like the amount of hugs that I got that weekend was great. I got to see so many wonderful friends. Got to congratulate so many of the England guys. Got to see Tom Lohman, Alex Fowler, obviously the lovely Greg Chamberlain who came up behind me and just started cuddling me. And I was like, I have no idea who this is. And then I realised it was Greg, and I was just absolutely thrilled. Turn around, a massive snuggle. He's a brilliant chap. We are very blessed with the community that we have, and it was really nice to have 5 incredible matches against just paragons of the community. So it was lovely to see the level of positivity. When I was a little bit worried about some movement, because basically in the game with Jord, he asked if I could move his Sangard, and I was like, I get what you're trying to do, I don't know if I can do it properly for you. And then like it just happened that one of the refs was right there and he came and helped out, so that was really appreciated. Big shout out to Dave, even as much as he teases me about my movement. That was really nice. The ref team in general were great. The organisers were awesome. It was a really fun weekend, really very enjoyable. A great time. You should definitely sign up to the 500 player team event that's going to be in November. That will be the winter ITC. That will be the first one of 25-26. So check that out. If you can throw a team together, do. It's just a ton of fun. I will definitely be there. We're just working out how we're doing teams in 25-26. So more on that probably later on the Black Crow socials. But finally then, thank you so much for watching. That's very important to say. You can head to Glasshammer Gaming and you can get 5% off by putting in the code Black Crow. Now that's not only for their boxes of Warhammer, that's also for events. You can go support our lovely case sponsors, Trident Futureworks, and they're over on Instagram as well. We don't have a discount code for them, but they're just a really cool little startup, so go support those guys. Their cases are really cool. I'm going to be picking up myself one of them very soon. Then we've also got the rather wonderful sponsor that is Terrain Forge, that help us be competitive by getting us that terrain that we need to practice, which is very, very important indeed. And you can get 5% off with the code BCG5. Then go and follow all of our social media. You can go and join my Patreon if you want. I don't post that much on there because I'm a lazy bastard. But in all honesty, I will try and get better at posting on there. The only reason I'm not at the moment is just because I'm getting used to this new job. But like, if you like my work and you want to like buy me a coffee or something like that, like the Patreon is the place to do it. Then obviously we've got channel memberships that you can now get for Black Crow, which is cool. You can come join our Discord. Apparently a lot of you try and message me in the Discord. I don't check that Discord. Sorry. But you can get me over in the Angelus Mortis Discord. There is only so much Discording a man can do. I flit around enough groups and organise enough within Black Crow anyway. So I'm not the best at checking that. But definitely go join both of those if that's your thing. And I think finally, I guess it's saying thank you. Thank you to our opponents. Thank you to our sponsors. Thanks to the team for being so fucking awesome. And most importantly, I guess it's stay loyal, fuckers. And we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.